The night was heavy with silence, broken only by the crash of waves against the hulls of the transport ships. Inside the landing craft, rows of young Marines sat with helmets pulled low and rifles clutched tight. Some whispered prayers under their breath. Others tried to hide the fear flickering in their eyes. No one spoke louder than a murmur. The only sound was the metallic rattle of weapons and the pounding of hearts. "Prepare to land!" the order came over the loudspeaker. The boats lurched forward, cutting through the dark waters toward Guadalcanal. The men had been told this place was vital. The first real step into the Pacific, a test of whether America could stand against the empire that had spread across Asia. But no speech could prepare them for what waited on that shore. As the boats drew closer, the night erupted. Japanese machine guns spat fire from hidden bunkers, bullets hammering the water around the Marines. Splashes turned crimson. Men dropped before they even reached land. The smell of smoke and cordite filled the air, choking every breath. "Keep your heads down," a sergeant roared. One Marine lifted his weapon, not a rifle but the stubby, brutal Winchester Model 97 trench gun. His knuckles were white as he gripped it. When the ramp slammed down and the first wave charged forward, he fired. The shotgun roared like thunder. The blast tore through the jungle brush ahead, silencing the machine gun nest for a brief, precious moment. Marines surged onto the sand, their boots sinking into the wet shoreline, the air alive with fire and screams. The battlefield was chaos. Explosions ripped open the beach, spraying sand and blood into the air. Japanese soldiers, well hidden in the tree line, poured fire into the charging Marines. For every man that fell, another rushed forward, driven by the simple instinct to survive. Private Collins, barely 20 years old, crouched behind a shattered log, fumbling to reload his shotgun. His hand shook, his breath came ragged. Beside him, another Marine yelled, "Rifles can't stop them in here. Let them get close, then hit them hard." Collins snapped the action shut, leaned out and fired. The blast echoed like a hammer blow, and a Japanese soldier collapsed just yards away. Collins could feel the recoil slam into his shoulder, feel the spray of dirt and fragments sting his face. His fear didn't vanish, but with every shot, his will hardened. The jungle loomed ahead like a wall of shadows. Machine gun fire came from everywhere at once. The Marines clawed their way forward, crawling, sprinting, firing blindly into the dark. The smell of blood and powder was thick, almost suffocating. Shotguns roared again and again, each blast clearing space in the suffocating green. Where a rifle's bullet might miss in the thick brush, a shotgun blast tore through everything, leaves, bark, and flesh. The weapon was merciless, and in the hands of desperate men it became a force of terror. Hours passed like minutes. The fight pushed inland into the jungle's choking grip. Visibility dropped to mere feet, every step haunted by the thought of an enemy hiding just beyond sight. In the green darkness, the shotgun became the Marines' most trusted ally. Every time its thunder rang out, men felt the tiniest flicker of hope. By dawn, the beach was theirs. The sand was littered with helmets, rifles, and the still bodies of the fallen. Smoke drifted lazily above the tree line. The Marines were exhausted, filthy, and hollow-eyed, but they were alive. A young Marine wiped the grime from his shotgun and muttered to his squad, "This thing saved me. Saved us all." His sergeant, blood on his sleeve, simply nodded. "We hold this ground now, no going back. This island is ours, or it's our grave." Guadalcanal had begun. The Pacific was awake, and the shotgun had announced itself as more than just a weapon. It was survival made of steel and fire. The beachhead was secure, but Guadalcanal was far from one. The Marines soon discovered that the island itself was as deadly as the enemy. Towering jungle swallowed them whole, a suffocating labyrinth of tangled roots, dripping vines, and shadows that seemed to move on their own. Sunlight barely reached the forest floor. Every step forward felt like a step into the jaws of something waiting to kill. Patrols were constant. Men advanced slowly, rifles raised, sweat stinging their eyes. The jungle buzzed with insects, their endless drone masking the faintest hint of movement. At any moment, a burst of fire could erupt from behind a tree or a dugout tunnel. "Eyes up," whispered Corporal Hayes as he motioned his squad forward. He carried his shotgun close to his chest, finger brushing the trigger guard. "They're out here. They're always out here." The truth of his words came suddenly. A crack of gunfire split the silence. Bullets shredded leaves overhead, splintering branches. 2 Marines fell instantly, their helmets tumbling into the mud. The squad dove for cover. Hayes rolled behind a rotting log, heart pounding, ears ringing. He didn't hesitate. He pumped the action, leaned over the log, and fired. The shotgun roared. The blast ripped through the undergrowth, sending dirt, foliage, and a hidden Japanese soldier sprawling into the open. Another blast followed, cutting down a second figure who had been crouched just yards away. "Push up, push up!" Hayes shouted. The Marines advanced in short bursts, covering each other with fire. Rifles cracked, grenades thumped, and the shotguns thundered like storm drums. In the dense foliage, rifles often missed their mark, their long barrels snagging on branches. But the shotguns were different. Every blast carved space out of the suffocating green, a hammer blow in a world where visibility was measured in feet. Private Daniels, the youngest in the squad, muttered between breaths as he loaded shells into his weapon. "God, I just want to get home. But if I die here, I'm not going alone." He slammed the shotgun shut, his eyes burning with a mix of terror and fury. That night, the real horror began. Japanese soldiers skilled at infiltration crept dangerously close to Marine lines. Some slipped between sentries, others launched sudden bayonet charges in the darkness. Sleep was rare. Every rustle in the undergrowth could mean death. At midnight, a squad of Japanese soldiers broke through the perimeter. The first Marine they encountered barely had time to shout before he fired his shotgun. The blast lit up the night, throwing sparks and smoke into the blackness. The alarm spread instantly. Marines poured out of their foxholes, weapons ready, firing blindly into the dark. The air was chaos, rifles cracking, grenades exploding, the guttural shouts of charging men. But over it all, the deep gut-punch thunder of the shotgun dominated. At close range, it was unstoppable. Each pull of the trigger dropped an attacker in his tracks, buying the Marines precious seconds to regroup. One Marine, barely 19, fought with reckless desperation. He reloaded in the dark, fumbling with shells, his hands slick with sweat. "Stay back," he growled to himself, firing into the shadows. Each blast echoed like a heartbeat, his lifeline against the wave of attackers. By dawn, he had stopped 6 Japanese soldiers alone. When the sun rose, the ground was littered with bodies, friend and foe alike. The Marines sat in silence, hollow-eyed and exhausted. Their faces were streaked with mud and smoke, their hands trembling as they cleaned their weapons. Daniels broke the silence, running a rag down the barrel of his shotgun. "This thing, it's the only reason I'm still breathing." No one disagreed. They just stared into the jungle knowing the night would come again, and with it, another test of survival. Guadalcanal was not just a battle. It was a war against fear itself. Fear of the dark, fear of the unseen, fear of the jungle that swallowed men whole. And through it all, the shotgun remained the one weapon that gave Marines a fighting chance. By 1944, the Marines were no longer strangers to the Pacific. They had fought in jungles, endured starvation, and stared death in the face too many times to count. But nothing could prepare them for the islands of Saipan and Peleliu, places where the war descended into something darker, something almost inhuman. The beaches of Saipan erupted under artillery as Marines stormed ashore. Waves of explosions turned sand into geysers. Smoke swallowed the horizon. Japanese defenders poured machine gun fire from concealed bunkers. Men fell in rows before they could even lift their rifles. Yet through the carnage, the Marines pushed forward. Once again, the shotgun became their weapon of survival. In the smoke and the close confines of bunkers, its thunder shattered the defenses. Private Miller, his face blackened with soot, slammed a shell into his Winchester. "Clear that nest," his sergeant shouted. Miller fired point blank into the dark mouth of a pillbox. The blast lit the confined space like a flash of lightning, followed by silence. Marines rushed in, bayonets ready, but there was no one left to fight. The true nightmare, however, lay inland. Saipan's jungles gave way to caves, a labyrinth of tunnels where the Japanese had prepared to fight to the last man. Darkness pressed in from every side. Grenades rattled inside cavern mouths, but many times the defenders survived, firing back from deeper within. It was here that the shotgun found a new role. Marines began using ricochet shots, angling their blasts off stone walls so the buckshot would scatter deeper into the tunnels. The echoes rolled like thunder, the pellets striking men who could not even be seen. One squad huddled outside a cave entrance, the heat unbearable, the smell of death rising from within. Corporal Hayes, sweat pouring down his face, pumped his shotgun and said, "If hell has a sound, it's this thing." He fired into the cave wall. The blast boomed inside the tunnel, bouncing pellets into hidden defenders. Screams followed. The squad exchanged grim looks. It worked. Peleliu, however, was worse. The island was a fortress carved from coral and stone. Temperatures soared past 110 degrees. The sun baked Marines alive in their helmets, while Japanese soldiers struck from caves and tunnels invisible to the naked eye. For days, Marines fought over ridges with names that sounded like death sentences. Bloody Nose Ridge, Five Sisters, the Horseshoe. Every inch was paid for with blood. In one desperate assault, a platoon pinned down by crossfire had no way forward. Machine guns raked the ridge, cutting down anyone who dared to move. Then Sergeant Parker crawled forward, his shotgun clutched tight. Inch by inch he slid through the dirt, shells tucked into his vest. When he reached striking distance, he rose suddenly, firing blast after blast into the gun port. Each roar echoed against the coral, drowning out the enemy fire. His men surged behind him, grenades flying, bayonets flashing. The ridge was theirs, for the moment. The men were exhausted, half dead from heat and thirst. But the fighting never stopped. At night, the caves came alive with counterattacks. Marines would hear whispers in Japanese, then the shriek of a banzai charge. Shotguns barked in the dark, muzzle flashes lighting terrified faces. The ground shook with violence until dawn, when silence finally returned, and the cost was revealed in broken bodies lying in the dust. For many Marines, the shotgun had become more than a weapon. It was a shield, a promise that when the enemy came close, too close, they would not be defenseless. One Marine, staring at his empty bandolier after another night of hell, whispered hoarsely, "If this island doesn't kill me, the nightmares will." By the time Peleliu was declared secure, the Marines who survived carried more than scars. They carried memories of caves filled with smoke and screams, of nights where death clawed at the edge of every foxhole, of a weapon whose thunder was both their lifeline and their curse. The Pacific was tightening its grip, dragging men deeper into madness, and still ahead greater battles waited. The black sands of Iwo Jima stretched before the Marines like a vision of hell. Sulfur choked the air, and the ground shook with constant bombardment. From beneath the island, in tunnels carved deep into volcanic rock, Japanese defenders waited, unseen, unheard, until the moment they struck. The first waves hit the beach under withering fire. Mortars rained down. Machine guns spat death from invisible bunkers. Men fell into the sand, their rifles clutched tight, their faces buried in ash. The island itself seemed alive, spitting fire and steel. Corporal Jackson slammed into the ground beside his squad. "We're not on a beach," he muttered, coughing black dust. "We're on the doorstep of hell." The shotgun became a weapon of survival once more. In the labyrinth of tunnels, its roar shattered the silence. Marines advanced inch by inch, blasting into dark openings, bayonets ready for the counterattack. At Mount Suribachi, the fight was merciless. Marines clawed their way up the volcanic slope, grenades tumbling down at them, bullets zipping past like angry hornets. Sergeant Davis carried a shotgun strapped to his back, his hands blistered from the climb. When they reached the top, he turned to his men. "This is it. No turning back." They stormed the final caves, shotguns barking in unison. Smoke and fire poured out as grenades exploded. And then, in a moment that would live forever, the flag rose above the island. Men who had seen nothing but death for weeks lifted their eyes and felt, for a brief heartbeat, the weight of their struggle turn into pride. But the war was not done. Ahead lay Okinawa, the last, the bloodiest. Rain lashed the island. Mud swallowed boots. Okinawa was no battlefield. It was a graveyard waiting to be filled. Civilians huddled in caves, caught between two armies. Kamikaze planes screamed from the skies, crashing into ships, turning steel into fire. On the ridges, Marines fought house by house, cave by cave. Shotguns thundered in close quarters, each blast echoing across the hills. Corporal Lee, his eyes hollow from exhaustion, whispered, "Every time I pull the trigger, I wonder if I'll live long enough to load another shell." The Japanese defended with a desperation born of certain death. Night after night, banzai charges came. Marines stood shoulder to shoulder, firing into the dark, the ground trembling with each wave. Blood mingled with mud, turning foxholes into pits of horror. One night, Private Ramirez found himself alone, his squad scattered by a mortar blast. From the shadows, voices rose, enemy soldiers closing in. His shotgun was all he had. He pumped and fired, the blast lighting the night. He screamed with every shot, rage and terror pouring out. By dawn, he was still alive, his weapon empty, his ears ringing. Around him lay silence and the fallen. Okinawa dragged on for weeks. Tens of thousands died. Marines who had survived Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Saipan, Peleliu, and Iwo Jima looked into the abyss and wondered how much more a man could endure. When the battle was finally over, when the guns fell silent, the Marines stood among ruins. Their uniforms were tattered, their faces aged beyond their years. They had carried the shotgun through jungles, caves, beaches, and ridges. It had been their lifeline, their thunder in the darkness. And yet, even as victory loomed, there was no celebration, only silence. The Pacific War had taken too much. For those who survived, the memories never left. The roar of the shotgun in tunnels, the cries of the wounded, the sight of the flag on Iwo Jima, the endless rain on Okinawa. They had lived through the storm, and though the war was ending, the echoes of battle would haunt them forever.